Hello, viewer, and thank you very much for joining us on today's show. This is GBS Morning Extra, and today is the 9th day of the month of September 2019. My name is Timothy Omondi. Welcome aboard. We start first with the news highlights of the day. President Uhuru Kenyatta over the weekend met and rewarded members of the legendary Mwakigwena choir group from Gombatu in Kwale County. The group, famous for its patriotic songs, started out as a school choir in the 1970s under the tutelage of music teacher and composer Enoch Ondego.
Walifanya kazi kubwa kupigania nchi hii yetu ya Kenya. Mpaka sasa hivi tumeunda chama ambacho kinaitwa Mwakigwena Previous Singers. Mwakigwena Previous Singers wametunga wimbo wako wewe. Na kushukuru kwa kazi uliyofanya. Umetuletea vitu vingi sana. Hivi vitu umeleta vinagusa moyo wangu, niseme ni nani kama wewe.
Tumefika wakati ya kukumbuka wale ambao wameunda na wametoa jasho yao na fikira zao kuunda nyimbo ambazo tunachezea wengine, na lazima pia wapate riziki yao kidogo. Si ni hivi? That is what we want. Na najua tutafanya namna hiyo. Lakini kwa sasa yangu ni kuwaomba, hivyo mlianza, tuendelee. Right?
As part of the government's reward, each of the 14 members of the group was allocated 3 acres of land at the Bunguni settlement scheme in Kwale County. The president said Wimbo wa Historia and Kenya ni Nchi ya Ajabu are some of the songs that made the group of national sensation and continues to be a reference point of Kenya's struggle of independence.
Makofi afuatwe na Pochi Juma atachukuliwa.
Nchi yetu tunaipenda, ina umoja. Kenya ni nchi yetu tunaipenda sana.
Ubarikiwe sana. Na msalimiane mkifika nyumbani. God bless you.
Well, indeed, it's quite a joy. For those who grew up in the late 70s and early 80s and 90s, you know what those songs mean when it comes to patriotism. Still in the coast, and over the weekend, President Uhuru Kenyatta advised leaders to have a broader and more long-term view of development, saying the focus should be on projects that benefit more people through wealth and employment creation. The president, who spoke at State House Mombasa when he hosted elected leaders from the region on Friday, told the leaders to always put the interests of wananchi ahead of all other partisan considerations.
You will never achieve anything if you think you are going to climb the mountain alone. But if we want to walk and work together, there are many things that we shall be able to achieve. The essence of handshake is not about who shall be where and who shall have what position, who shall do what. But how can we as Kenyans together not live in the past, but learn from it? Not plan for today, but live in it. But plan for our future. Because that is what we can give as a gift to this country. Huh? Why am I saying these stories? I am just showing you what potential exists in this country if only we could just become visionary leaders. All of us together and work together in partnership.
The leaders, who included all governors from the 6 coastal counties of Mombasa, Kilifi, Lamu, Taita Taveta, Kwale, and Tana River. The head of state cautioned the leaders against divisive politics. Kenyatta reiterated that the handshake between him and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga was aimed at uniting all Kenyans so as to take Kenya the country's development agenda a notch higher. Now back to Nairobi, and still over the weekend, the Deputy President William Ruto, led by former Kakamega Senator Boni Halwale, expressed confidence that Mr. Mudavadi should get on board the Ruto camp, and if they do so, they will be able to wipe out the Odinga remnant from Western Kenya. In a more reconciliatory mood, he reminded the Amani leader that he campaigned for him and the ODM leader Raila Odinga in 2007 presidential election. The Deputy President William Ruto also pleaded with the Amani National Congress leader Musalia Mudavadi to join him in forming a political alliance to push for the presidency in 2022.
Unajua kuna watu wenye ujuzi wa kuunda serikali. Kuna wengine wa ujuzi wa kuunda upinzani. Sasa mtajiamulia. Mnataka wale mtaungana na wao kuunda upinzani ama mnataka wale mtaungana na wao kuunda serikali? Si namna hiyo? Tuko pamoja? Nyinyi mko tayari tuungane pamoja? Ama namna gani? Si namna hiyo? Saa hizi mimi nataka niwaeleze ya kwamba Omwami Musalia aje aungane na timu hii, tuende pamoja na timu ya Karanga na timu ya kina Washali na hii timu tuunde serikali. Ama ni namna gani?
Well, still on politics there, we see an optimistic Deputy President William Ruto with 2022 politics. Now, back in Kibera, Bernard Okoth, brother to the late Ken Okoth, will now face off with Jubilee MacDonald Mariga and ANC's Eliud Owalo and Ford Kenya's engineer Hamisi Butichi in the Kibera by-election. Okoth, also popularly known as Imran, floored the other 9 aspirants in the Saturday's ODM primaries with 4,382 votes. Okoth will face off with other candidates on November 7th in the race to succeed his late brother Ken Okoth, who died of cancer on July 26th. All eyes now shift to campaigns with Jubilee Party promising to invade the constituency well known as Raila's backyard for decades. Well, those pictures actually depict some of the emotional moods that rocked the elections or the primaries earlier in the day before the winner was announced later in the evening, because some of the voters were found not to be in the list of voters, so they actually made some fuss there, but Kam later returned and the winner was announced later in the day. Moving on now to the Kenyatta National Hospital, staff have promised to go on strike, actually promised to go on strike yesterday evening in a press conference that they held at the hospital. The staff are claiming or are citing poor pay, and they promised to down their tools by midnight this morning. So let's listen in.
Kiongozi wetu CEO anajali maslahi yetu, kumbe ni yake peke yake. Hii ulimwengu ndugu yangu iko na maajabu. Baada ya kugundua na kujua haya yote, sisi kama wafanyikazi tukapeana ilani kutoka tarehe 21 mwezi wa 8 mwaka huu. Maajabu haijaisha. Hakuna mtu kwa serikali, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health, amejitokezea kuzungumza na sisi. Siku 14 naisha leo saa 8 au saa 6 ya usiku. Wafanyikazi wote wa Kenyatta National Hospital kuanzia 001 on 9 minute, sisi zote hatutaweza kuendelea na kazi.
Well, quite unfortunate there. We'll follow up on that story and bring you updates as it continues. A church fundraiser turned chaotic at Gitua Catholic Church in Murang'a County after Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro stormed in and vowed to preside over a ceremony which was attended by Jubilee party leaders affiliated to the Kieleweke function. Mr. Nyoro, who belongs to the Tanga Tanga function, which roots from Deputy President William Ruto's 2022 presidential bid, the Kiharu MP arrived late for the Sunday function after over 20 members allied to the Kieleweke had taken their seats. He found nominated MP Maina Kamanda introducing his team and waited for his turn, but when he took over the microphone, Mr. Nyoro said he was the area MP and hence would be the one to invite the guests to speak, as a move that was objected by Mr. Kamanda. The MP castigated Mr. Kamanda, maintaining that he would not leave the podium. After calm was restored, Mr. Kamanda took over and presided over the ceremony with speeches being made. Well, chaos there in church, and it's quite unfortunate. Just for your information, viewer, Mr. Nyoro spent the whole night, last night, waking up this morning at the Royal Media Services in Hurlingham, where he refused to come out because there were claims that some men who claimed to be police wanted to arrest him over the same issue to question him, and he maintained his position at the Royal Media Service premises in Hurlingham. We also follow up on that story and we'll let you know how this story goes. Now, to a man whose legacy is a controversy. Some people think he is a liberator. Some people think he's a dictator who actually spoiled the country, which once was known as the African or the bread basket of Africa. I'm talking about the former Rhodesia, which is now known as Zimbabwe. The son of a village carpenter, Mugabe was trained as a teacher in a Roman Catholic mission school. He was introduced to nationalist politics while he was a student at the University College of Fort Hare in South Africa. Between 1956 and 1960, he taught in Ghana. Mugabe returned to Rhodesia in 1960, and in 1963, he helped the Reverend Ndambanigi Sithole to form the Zimbabwean African National Union, ZANU, as a breakaway from the Joshua Nkomo Zimbabwe Africa People's Union, ZAPU. In 1964, he was arrested for subversive speech and spent the next 10 years in prison. During that period, he acquired a law degree by correspondence courses. While still in prison, he led a coup in 1974, deposing Sithole as the ZANU's leader. In the late 1974, Mugabe was freed. During the civil war that pitted Rhodesia's black majority population against Prime Minister Ian Smith's white-ruled Rhodesia government in between 1975 and 1979, Mugabe was joint leader with Nkomo of the Patriotic Front, PF, of Zimbabwe. The party's guerrilla operated against the Rhodesian government from bases in neighboring Zambia, Mozambique, and Angola. Fresh negotiations in London in 1979 ended the war and led to the new British supervised parliamentary election in February 1980. Mugabe's party, now using the name ZANU-PF, won a landslide victory over the black parties, and he became the prime minister. Mugabe later took office and since stayed in office until his ouster 2 years ago.
But when we have served 2 terms, we have not done much. And 2 terms was like 2 weeks. So we want to go more. So you want another term, and you must find an excuse. The first term I served, oh no, it was not a real term. But you were there for 5 years. Oh no, it was Parliament which chose me. I should have been chosen by the people, so that one does not count. And may I say to the United States President, Mr. Trump, please blow your trumpet. Blow your trumpet in a musical way towards the values. We equally reject attempts to prescribe new rights that are contrary to our values, norms, traditions, and beliefs. We are not gays.
Let no one who is negative want to spoil what we are doing for ourselves in order to unite Africa. We belong to this continent. We don't mind having and bearing sanctions banning us from Europe. We are not Europeans. We have not asked for any inch of Europe, or any square inch of that territory. So, Blair, keep your England and let me keep my Zimbabwe.
Regime change, Mugabe should not be there. We want someone else. The Creator was telling me the other day that he had been told that, oh no, your party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, had been in power for too long. You must now allow another party also to take over. Is that democracy? And that was coming from Europe. Tell them to shut their mouths. If Blair said, I'm no longer willing to pay for the land, should we have just folded our hands and say, oh, Lord Almighty, I pray in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit? Goodness me, no. Blair, and who was he? Just a Prime Minister of Britain. I'm President of Zimbabwe.
Well, Robert Mugabe memories there. Quite something, I would say. Today, I'm joined in studio by my guest, Rokin Okoth, who will be discussing with issues of the Kibera elections or the Kibera politics, and also we'll be looking at the Mao issue, which has now turned political, and as well we are going to talk a little bit about the 2022 politics. Rokin, habari asubuhi.
Nzuri sana.
Before we take a short break, we were supposed to take a short break and then come back and start our discussion. But I really don't. Over the break, we were talking about Mugabe, and we had divergent views. I would say many people look at Mugabe and say that this guy is a dictator, and actually point out, the ills that one would want to say that he brought to his own country. Yes, they say he was a liberator, but his long stay in power and the way that he handled matters of state in the country brought the country down. And some people seem to disagree and still think that Mugabe is that hero to them. What's your take on that?
Well, my take is that those ones who are claiming that he was a tyrant, they are wrong, because most of us, not just in Kenya, most of us in Africa, and even the position of MDF Kenya, is that Mugabe was a liberator. He liberated the former British colony Rhodesia from the white minority rule. And I wonder if people wanted Mugabe to behave like Jesus Christ, because Mugabe is human. Mugabe in the entire continent is the only African who liberated the blacks from this minority rule and gave them back their land. Tell me any African country, even South Africa is still struggling to get back their land. Mugabe delivered land back to the Africans. So, as to whether he was a tyrant or not, that question is moot, because like any other leader, has Mugabe dropped a bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Has he killed Jews in an incarceration camp?
But one would want to argue that the kind of rule that Mugabe put in his country, which also terrified his own people, no one could speak against Mugabe. Mugabe's regime was an authoritarian regime, and that's something that is known to the whole world. Put aside the sanctions and everything, Mugabe ruled with an iron fist, and that is not a secret.
Why would we put aside the sanctions when they created an enabling environment for Mugabe to maintain power?
So
like even in Kenya, for example, in the 80s, we remember the Mwakenya movement. People ran into exile. Why? Because the former president Daniel Moi saw it wise to be very authoritarian, because he knew that his power was at stake. People were actually challenging his regime. So the only way any leader in the world can maintain power is by being ruthless. And I don't support the killing of people in Gukuru. It is called Gukurahundi, where he killed over 20,000 people. Yes. But is he the only one who killed people? You go to any country the world over.
But does two wrongs make a right?
I'm not but why would we make Mugabe's wrongs more wrong than the wrongs of others? Mugabe gave land back to the people, and he's a hero. We'll remember
land which some of them could not actually cultivate, because a farmer was getting thousands of acres which he had no idea on what to do with them, and could not even provide food. Zimbabwe, which was once the breadbasket of Africa, turned out to be a country that bread cost a sack of money.
I don't deny. Even today, Zimbabwe's economy is in shambles. Why? Because of the environment that were created by the Bretton Woods system in the 80s.
But also
whereby
with the kind
the
of
structural adjustment programs were put in place. And to add on that, the West decided to sanction Zimbabwe just because Mugabe was not on the same script with them. We have seen even here the clips of Mugabe trying to stand to the West. He was the only man in the house who could stand to the West and tell them the truth. That's why they sanctioned him.
We've had countries that stood against the West. Kenya in particular, we stood against the West.
When?
I mean, how did we gain our independence?
My friend,
we are no longer ruled by the West.
We accept
unless we have a different ideology of how we look at
we have
leadership
a different ideology.
Definitions
Mugabe believed in
of
Marxism.
democracy.
Mugabe believed in Marxism. Mzee Jomo was a capitalist. He was a stooge of the West.
And we've proved over time that Marxism actually did not stand to rule. I mean, look at the countries that were ruled by the socialist ideologies of the Marxists.
That one is debatable. That one is debatable. Look at Tanzania. No,
That's a perfect example.
That one is debatable. You look at Tanzania. So what I'm trying to say is, like, when he went to lecture in Ghana, who was his mentor? Kwame Nkrumah. When he was lecturing, he was a teacher in South Africa. The black nationalists in South Africa were his mentors. So Mugabe cannot assume any image of somebody other than his mentors. And I believe that Mugabe, the reason why he's being demonized and packaged by the Western media as this tyrant, who could not deliver his people from poverty.
Is it really right to say that it's the Western media
he was saying the right thing?
Is it really right to say that it's the Western media that is packaging Mugabe in that way, whereas his own citizens could not speak freely against what was happening in their country? You could not talk about, I once had a conversation with a very prominent Zimbabwean business person, and he's telling me, you cannot even talk about, the bad road in front of your house because you'll be seen as talking against the government, and that's something that was not allowed.
I think it is time as Africa, we have our own definition of the term democracy.
True, that's very true, but then tyranny is tyranny. You cannot justify tyranny and call it democracy.
What is tyranny? Tyranny is too much government, and lack of government means anarchy. Every government has tyranny. So long as there is government, there is tyranny. Tyranny means too much government in the affairs of the people. Lack of government means anarchy. So long as a country is stable, so long as a country has a government, and Mugabe's...
What is Mugabe's government? Was it tyranny or was it anarchy?
Tyranny was redefined by the West to bastardize African leaders, and especially African leaders who believe in the African condition. And Mugabe, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, was this kind of leader who could say the truth and who ensured that the government speaks for the African condition. He delivered land to the people. He tried to, until 80s, Mugabe was doing exceptionally well in terms of education and health. And in fact, he's the most learned president. He was the most learned president in the continent.
He took office and leadership of the country in the early 80s. So until 90s, his country was now starting to dip and falling.
Why is it that he actually delivered in the first?
Then why hold on to power if you know that you're staying there? Is it doing the country any good?
You know what happens in Africa is that when you are a stooge of the West, then they glorify you, they clap for you, not because you are good, but because you are eating on the same table with them, because you are helping them to achieve their interests. Mugabe said no. He chased them out of Zimbabwe, and that's what we want. We cannot have whites and our colonial overlords controlling 3/4 of our economy and claim that we own that economy. Mugabe is a liberator, and may his soul rest in peace. We support him for that.
Thank you, Rokin Okot. I believe that all viewers will agree with you on that, but that's your take. Well, viewer, in Kenya right now we are grappling with issues of the Mau forest. The Mau forest issue has become is a huge environmental issue, but at the same time, Kenyan politicians have decided to turn it into a political issue. Political issue because since the Moi regime, the Mau has been a hot political topic. Every year or every time eviction is attempted in the area, it causes problems. And this time, as any other time, the Mau issue has become a huge issue. But not only that, world over, the issue of deforestation is actually a big issue, and that's why briefing via teleconference from the COP14, which takes place in New Delhi, India, from the 2nd to the 13th of September, the Executive Secretary General of the United Nations Convention for Combat Desertification, UNCCD, Ibrahim Thiaw, say that land degradation is generating a huge loss to the world economy, estimated to be between 10 to 17% of the global GDP.
Land is providing us with 99.7% of the food we eat. So almost all the calories we eat are coming from land. It is also providing us with the water we drink. The quality of the water we get is coming from land and from its ecosystems. It's a major contributor to our economies, and land degradation, which is the phenomenon that we are dealing with, is actually generating huge loss to the world economy. The loss is estimated between 10 and 17% of the global GDP. Land degradation is also a phenomenon that has connections with peace and security. I'm sure you know that the situation, in particular in the Sahel, is a mix of many factors, including competition over access to land and water, which is triggering conflicts between farmers and pastoralists, as is the case in Nigeria, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and in other parts of the Sahel. Land degradation is a phenomenon that has been known for many years. Now, the point is, how can we address this issue? And the good news is that the technology, the science, and the knowledge is there to actually reduce land degradation and fix this phenomenon once for all.
Well, revising land degradation and its outcome while accelerating positive achievement for the people and for ecosystem with a view of delivering a sustainable development goals is the core agenda of the 14th session of the COP14. We now take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get into the discussion. Of course, you've seen just the tip of the iceberg. Rokin Okot is our guest today, and we are going to discuss matters Mao. We're going to discuss matters of the Kibera by-election, and not to forget also the issue of the 2022 politics. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back after this.
Assessment of education is based mainly on knowledge gained by students studying fiercely. With their busy lives, people are unable to spare time in today's competitive society. People are living without hope for the future. This creates social problems in the absence of education mindsets. Problems such as game addiction, school violence, alcoholism, drug addiction, divorce, crime, and suicide. Today's world is becoming ill. Changed minds give changed lives. Changed minds bring a changed world. Today, the world desperately needs strong minds, moderate mindsets, and the intellect of change and challenge presented by the International Mind Education Institute. The International Mind Education Institute was founded in 1995 by people who know the importance of the right mind of education based on the experience gained from changing young people for the better. The Institute has analyzed many social problems from various angles and found that each country has and holds the key solution. In July 2012, at the Minister of Youth World Forum, a joint declaration for character education was issued, proposing measures to overcome the limitations of knowledge-oriented education. In 2015, the Republic of Korea, understanding the importance of character education, legislated the world's first Character Education Promotion Act to diverge from knowledge-driven education and enforce compulsory character education in public schools. In order to change the world, the International Mind Education Institute teaches these new mindsets to participants such as parents and family camps, students, teachers, professors, military personnel, business personnel, police officers, reserve officers, training corps, and public officials.
That he gave during this PPT presentation, it really sends the chills down my spine, and it really it's a very promising concept, and I believe that my faculty and my students, if they go through this experience, like today we have signed a memorandum of association MOU with IMEA, and I look forward to enrolling my students and all my faculty, which are in like numbers, they're 200 in number. I plan to enroll them for this fabulous course, and I'm sure that they will get something out of it. very productive out of it. I'm looking forward to it.
International Mind Education Institute specializes in both character and mind education, presenting the proper ethos for a happy life of humanity. The organization systematically operates educator forums and mind education specialist training in many countries, as well as counseling programs in schools, military bases, government offices, industries, businesses, and prisons. After signing MOUs with global educational institutions, IMEI supports the establishment of mind education departments in universities and proposes vision and direction of mind education through academic exchanges, promoting active joint activities. The Mind Education of International Mind Education Institute cultivates strong heart to solve and overcome any difficulties people face in their life and help lead problem-free and happy lives. Changed minds give changed lives. Changed minds bring a changed world.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, you're watching GBS Morning Extra. To keep the conversation going, you can take our Twitter handle, that's at Kenya GBS, and also you can follow the hashtag GBS Morning Extra. 21144 is the SMS line, and also you can get to watch this very episode on Facebook and on YouTube as well. Our guest today is Rokin in studio, and as we promised earlier, Matters Mau, the Kibera by-election, and the 2022 politics. These are the top political issues that trended this weekend. Let's start with the Kibera by-elections. Rokin, in your own opinion, what do you make of the Kibera by-election? Bernard Okoth now takes the flag, bears the flag for the ODM party in the upcoming November by-elections.
Yeah, in Kibera, first of all, I just want to congratulate Imran for emerging as the winner in the by-election, in the nominations of ODM. You know, the shoes that Okoth left, Ken Okoth, should be filled by somebody who can actually deliver. And I think that whoever is going to take the mantle in Kibra is going to emulate, to copy the steps of the late Ken Okoth.
Yes.
Now, these nominations, whether or not they were fair, we have not seen anybody come out clearly to condemn the nominations. The last time I checked, I saw Benson Musungu congratulating Imran and saying that it was free and fair. So I've not seen any case. And you know, Kibra has 5 wards.
Yes.
And I know the candidate who is going to Mashal is supporters well, because we have seen big wigs the big parties. You have seen Jubilee field Mariga to play populist card, and ODM, the nominations, given that they were free and fair, and people are saying that the brother to the late is going to garner sympathy votes, and in ANC, Eliud Owalo, who was a chief strategist of Baba himself, is going also to play in this game, the murky waters of politics, and even in Butichi of Fort Kenya. So you find a scenario whereby the bigger parties in the country are going to battle out for the seat, and I'm very sure that against all challenges that the Kibra is facing, and against any political gimmick that is going to be seen in Kibra, the strongest candidate is going to emerge, and only 2 people, let me say 3, have the chance to take it, and I'm saying that one deliberately. Eliud Owalo, number 1, Imran, number 2, and Mariga might come number 3. Because in Kibra, if you look at, because we vote on tribal lines, if you look at the tribal alignment of Kibra and the composition of Kibra, you'll find that majority of the people are Luyas, then Luos, then Nubians, then followed by other tribes. So if we go by that lens, we will find out that the people who are likely to win this seat are either people who are in NC or a Luya and Luo. So whether Butichi coming with Fort Kenya and Owalo being shielded by Mudavadi, you know, it might divide some votes, but it is going to depend on the game plan, on the strategy of each party, because as I've said, Jubilee is using popular culture, whereby this guy Mariga is a celebrity, and in fact, before the nominations of ODM, I was advising some ODM strategists that it would be better to shield Chris Darling, because he's also in popular culture, and he's an artist, and the cards will have played better with against Mariga.
But despite that, he also understands the region. He actually grew up in the slum, and made from whatever he was and made himself to be who he is today.
Who? Mariga?
No.
Oh, Chris.
Chris
Yeah,
Darling,
that's what I'm saying. If I were a chief strategist in ODM, I will give a card to Chris Darling, because he's also in popular culture. He will have contested better, but now that they have decided to choose low culture in the person and character of Imran to follow the footsteps of the brother, that one is their own game plan.
Some people also argue that the reason Imran was able to clinch these contests is that Imran himself worked together with his brother, the late MP Okot. In most of his CDF projects, Imran was very actually instrumental in management, and his management skills have also been applauded by the constituents themselves.
Yeah, it is an argument that nobody can deny, because when the late was actually battling cancer, the brother Imran with the team Timothy Wanyonyi were working together hand in hand to deliver to the people of Kibra, and I think those governance skills that he showed to the people of Kibra maybe have given them a reason to back him up. But he's going to have it rough, because the opponents he is facing are worthy. If you look at Eliud Owalo, he has been a chief strategist of ODM.
So he understands how the ODM politics
the terrain of ODM politics. He understands the cards that Baba might pull. He understands ODM in Kibra. So is not something that you can wish away. You look at Mariga on the other side. He's popular, and Ruto. I'm told Ruto is the one who suggested his name. Ruto is not a fool. Ruto is also a chief strategist, and the fact that he came up with the Mariga's name and not any other person, it means he's pulling the popular culture card, which to some extent is going to go away with a lot of votes from youths and people who love Mariga and love football in Kibra. So Imran is not going to have it.
But then I had this argument that Mariga, as much as he is popular, but then there's criticism that what has Mariga done for this nation, even for the young people, for the football, Kenya is a country that loves football.
Sure.
What has he done for football, even in Kenya?
And that's the question I want to ask Kenyans.
And what is he now going to do it differently in Kibera, which he was not able to do for the country, and even from where he hails?
That's why I'm telling you, Mariga, other than the fact that he's popular because of football, he has done nothing, absolutely nothing, for the people of Kibera.
If we were to be fair to him, if we want to compare him with football stars from the West, from the western part of Africa, those guys have built hospitals, they build academies, they build schools, and they're doing a lot for their locals.
He will need a lot of forgiveness from people to win. A lot of forgiveness, which I believe he has no chance, because there are other people who are better in the race than him. Yeah, where has he been?
Sure.
Where has he been
all
this time? So he cannot just show up because our brother has died. You can see even my name is Okoth. You cannot just show up because our brother has died.
Now he
and
wants
you
to come
want to take over power.
In his press conference, he said that he's not playing anyone's politics, and it's not anyone's puppet, and that he wants to give back to community. What do you think Mariga wants to give back to the...
It is not anyone's puppet, and he's running on Jubilee ticket. He could have come as an independent candidate.
Running on Jubilee ticket does not mean that he is anyone's puppet.
It means you believe in the ideology of someone or people in Jubilee. So it means somebody else is pulling the strings.
But people do share ideologies.
You are a stooge of the party.
People do share ideologies.
People do
you want to say that everyone running for ANC,
I've just told you I like Mugabe, right? I've just told you I like Mugabe. So if I do what Mugabe did, it means I believe in him. It means he is my mentor, right?
If you do what his party believes in,
yes,
the ZANU-PF.
Yes, it means.
So should we dissolve the ZANU-PF and form another party because now those are ideologies
I've
belonging
said
to him?
If Mugabe, as the leader, as the former leader of ZANU-PF,
yes,
did anything and I believe in his ideologies, it means him being at the helm or the vanguard of that party. I believe in what he believes in. Mariga, nobody has come out to say he's Uhuru's candidate. Everybody is saying Ruto is the one who brought you. So what I'm trying to say, the only way he can say that he's not anybody's stooge is if he could have come independently. If he could have presented himself as an individual or an institution called Mariga, then somebody can comfortably say, this man is on his own. But he is coming with somebody else's card. Have you ever seen Mariga in the past claim to be a member of Jubilee?
That has never been seen. But some people are also saying that the deputy president is setting himself up for the 2022 politics. He's trying to field candidates here and there, and although they fail now, but then he's testing the waters to see how he can be able to manipulate and play around with the numbers.
Yeah, that one is it can't be denied because the deputy president has positioned himself as a person of interest in the 2022 politics, and we find that I like him sometimes because he plays Machiavellian politics. He's very crude and shrewd in his strategies. So I think fielding a candidate in Kibra is trying to test the waters against Raila. And if anybody will win other than ODM, then credit will go to the deputy president. Even if it will not be Mariga, even if it will be Eliud Owalo, credit will go to the deputy president because, number one, they will say that he shielded a candidate who went and divided the votes to deny ODM a chance to clinch the position. However, if ODM is going to win this seat, then I think nothing will be added to Baba because the late was in ODM, and ODM will have taken the position.
Retained their seat.
Ruto will gain in two ways: if Mariga wins, or if any other party wins other than ODM. But on the other side, Raila stands to lose if other parties win and his party loses, or he will not gain anything if ODM clinches the seat.
And what if he wins with a very narrow margin?
That one will also speak volume because people say, okay, his popularity is waning.
It's dwindling.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Now, away with the politics, and of course, maybe if we just mention, the deputy president promised to go back to Kiberia on Sunday, but he was nowhere to be seen there. What happened?
He was testing what, that's why I've told you he's a shrewd politician. He wanted to see the reaction. I'm very sure his advisors told him that it is not safe. It's not safe to go in Kibra, and I'm very sure maybe he wanted ODM to conduct their primaries first, and after the waters have cooled down,
then
he can go
for
politically and campaign. I think it is not yet, because after the nominations, it is now open to every candidate to go and campaign, and you'll now see him in full gear. Going to Kibra to campaign as the deputy president who is campaigning for his candidate in Jubilee.
Well, and we also saw him there, talking about 2022 politics, we also saw the deputy president there speaking, beckoning the Luhya nation to come and form an alliance with him and form a party. If I may just ask maybe for that clip to be played so that you can just listen to those remarks as we continue. But then it's clearly that, Deputy President is setting himself up, he's gearing up, and this time coming out publicly. We know that there has been some leaders from the Luhya nation who have always, been aligning themselves with him. Sure. But then this time coming out boldly and even naming names and also beckoning the likes of the ANC leader, Musalia Mudavadi. Maybe let's take a look at that. Let's take a listen.
Unajua kuna watu wenye ujuzi wa kuunda serikali. Kuna wengine wa ujuzi wa kuunda upinzani. Sasa mtajiamulia. Mnataka wale mtaungana na wao kuunda upinzani ama mnataka wale mtaungana na wao kuunda serikali? Si namna hiyo? Tuko pamoja? Nyinyi mko tayari tuungane pamoja? Ama namna gani? Si namna hiyo? Saa hizi mimi nataka niwaeleze ya kwamba Omwami Musalia aje aungane na timu hii, tuende pamoja na timu ya Karanga na timu ya kina Washali na hii timu tuunde serikali. Ama ni namna gani?
Well, who are these people ambao wanajua kuunda upinzani na ambao wanajua kuunda serikali?
you know there is something called agenda setting. Agenda setting is when a powerful person or leader or even politician comes up with a narrative, and that this narrative is taken by the people,
by the public,
and the public now views the reality based on the prism or the lenses of this leader. So the deputy president is trying to come up with an agenda for the country going forward. However, I like listening to speeches of the late Kijana Wamalwa. Kijana Wamalwa used to say that any leader, no matter how great he is, must stand on the shoulders or must be carried by other leaders, even greater leaders than himself, for him to be anybody in life. So the deputy president is trying to woo other people to stand with him because he understands he cannot make it alone. He cannot make it alone towards the referendum, but even post-referendum debate, he cannot make it even in 2022. So the fact that he's going out to Musalia Mudavadi, the fact that he's going out to other leaders, not just in Western region, but the entire country, it means that he's positioning himself for 2022. That one is a right step to take as the deputy president. The fact that every eye is pointed at him, he's right to do that. However, the way some of his supporters, you have seen how Ndindi Nyoro was behaved yesterday in church. So the people who might actually make him lose the script are his staunch supporters and the leaders he's working with, because they are going to come up with a narrative that will likely push his agenda aside, and people now concentrate on the kind of picture they are portraying and the side shows. Otherwise, it's right to call for people to support him, because as a leader, you cannot do it alone. You have to form alliances with other leaders so that you come up with something that you are looking at.
Now, to an elusive matter, I want us to discuss a little bit about the matter of the Mau forest. The matter of Mau forest has actually been very heated over the past week, And also we've seen, members of parliament and senators coming out and, facing off each other on the same. Some leaders, especially from the Kalenjin community and the Kipsigis community, who allegedly or came in from other parts of the country and bought land within the Mau, now being pitted against the Maasais, who are the indigenous owners of the land or residents. And now we see that the politics is actually that is coming in to be divisive and tribal politics. And we've seen even leaders coming out strongly and telling people, don't move. Despite the government, and I don't want to repeat these words, but we've seen a politician, an elected member, coming out and even using abusive words against the CES for Environment, Kiriako Tobiko. What do you make of this?
The issue of Mau is something that is debatable. Some other parts, even Mount Kenya region and Badea, people were relocated to other regions. There is nothing special about Mau. It is very wrong for politicians to come up and take positions and play a populism card when people are really suffering. I think it is right for the government to relocate people and do it with a lot of dignity, to save Mau and at the same time respect the rights and the dignity of the people living in this region.
Yes.
The communities living in Mau, the Maasai, the Kipsigis people, they should actually exercise some tolerance towards each other, because the politicians are trying to pit them against each other, which is not good. They should leave everything in Mau in the hands of the experts. The experts I'm talking about are the National Land Commission, and even if you look at chapter 5 of the Constitution of Kenya, which classifies land, talks about the principles guiding land, it says that land should be taken care of in a sustainable manner. And if the people in Mau, or if the government feels that the people living in Mau are jeopardizing the environment of the country, it is only good for them to be relocated to another place. And those ones holding valid certificates or title deeds should be compensated. Should be compensated. But now politics, when politics comes into play, it becomes very difficult for the government to actually resolve this issue, because you have seen politicians taking sides and saying, they are targeting a certain individual in leadership, that's why his people are being targeted, or they are doing that because of 2022. But that one is wrong, because it was not wrong for people to be relocated from Mount Kenya. It was not wrong for people to be relocated from Abadeas. Yes. Why should it be wrong for people to be relocated from Mau?
But then what they're arguing is, there is a part of Mau which is the forest, and there is a part of Mau which is now the Maasai Mau settlement scheme that was set aside, that actually is a land that was given by government for occupation. Yeah. But now that is where they have dispute, and they're saying that the government is now even threatening to evict people in that area, which is not the forest.
I was going through the clips of one Samson Cheragai, who is the chair of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee in the Senate. He had called the Cabinet Secretary of Environment, Kiriako Tobiko, to explain how the government is intending to carry out this thing in Mau. If you look at the clip, you sense some malice. This land that you are talking about, the scheme, is a trust land of the county, that county. And it is upon the county to come up with a solution to the issue. And it is classified, I think it is in Article 63 of the Kenyan Constitution, as community land, as community land. So, and that article also classifies, it talks about people who live in that place as their ancestral land, or as a hunter-gatherer community, to be the owners of land in a forest or in such an environment as Mau. And to me, the only people who should claim that land are the Ogiek. Any other person who can claim that land is there illegally. So the people who got the title deeds, we don't know who sold them to them, and the county should actually come up with a viable solutions. Of course, assisted with the National Land Commission and the Kenya Forest Service and other experts to verify the documents of these people so that they can be relocated peacefully, amicably, in a manner that respects the dignity of these people, in a manner that is not going to arouse emotions, in a manner that is not going to militarize the situation, but come up with a solution that is actually for posterity in the region, other than playing politics when people are suffering. You have seen how some people are suffering in this place.
Sure, it's very true.
Sure.
We have some clips. Maybe we take a listen to this press conference by the leaders who actually are against the idea of the eviction.
Yeah, sure.
And one thing that all leaders agree is that the Mao complex must be reserved for the sake of the future of our children and grandchildren. However, the points of departure are how the program should be implemented. At that time, all of us, and up to today, we must agree that the eviction must be done in an inhuman way that will ensure that the residents living in the forest land are removed and resettled elsewhere. But there are very hard questions. These very hard questions I want to raise. But there are questions. We used the Mao issue maximally. We raised this issue in the floor of the House. We went to Mao because we felt at that time the way it was being handled by the government then, it was unfair. I've heard many people talk about that the coalition, that if the Mao issue is not handled properly, it is going to either break or make Jubilee. I want to agree that perhaps maybe that can be another school of thought. But first of all, before we discuss about break or make Jubilee, can we agree that the Jubilee government was a coalition of...
Well, the Mao issue was used as a political bargain while forming the Jubilee.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as we want to say that let's set politics aside from conservation in the Mao issue, do you think it's really possible, Rakin, that we separate politics and the Mao?
It is not very possible because the environment and politics are like two sides of the same coin. You cannot separate politics from the environment.
Especially when it comes to land issues.
Yeah. So the Mao, you know, I'm talking about the environment because in my view, I'm looking at the forest and the good that comes out of the Mao. Because Mao does not just feed people around that place. It feeds people not just in Kenya, but in the entire region.
In the entire region,
so we cannot separate politics from Mao and from the evictions. That's why you have seen leaders that hail from this region coming out publicly to try and defend and play a populism card and stand with their people. But that one aside, the only way that thing can be solved is when the experts, not politicians, the experts actually have compromise, some sort of discussion and dialogue on how they are going to handle this issue. And like I've said, the experts, you cannot exclude the National Land Commission, the Ministry of Environment, the Kenya Forest Service, even the county government of Narok, which owns the trust land. They should come up with the experts to try and compromise the issue so that they find an amicable solution. So long as the root cause of Mao is not addressed, we will have a lot of rhetoric out of Mao, and politics will never end from the Mao. Politicians will use the Mao card either to clinch positions or to malign other politicians and to mudsling others. And that issue will actually be very moot towards 2022 because I'm very sure some politicians are very keen to use that to campaign.
And it's becoming a motive also, and as you listen to the rhetoric that is coming out of the mouths of many politicians today, the politicians are already starting to talk about your people, get your people out of here, your people, our people. Again, dividing people along tribal lines.
You know, some politicians misunderstand their role. you know, if you are a member of parliament or as a legislator or even a senator, because even a senator is a member of parliament.
Yes, he's a legislator.
You have 3 roles. And out of the 3 roles, the oversight, representation, and legislation, I've never seen anywhere where a politician is needed to play a popular politics on an emotive issue as when people are losing lives in Mau. I think it is only fair if these politicians actually conduct the right offices and institutions that are mandated to talk about land, forests, and to actually talk about resettlement of these people. But if you leave, for example, the National Land Commission, if you leave the Kenya Forest Service, if you leave the county government of Narok and you go to the public, you try to incite these people, you know what you are creating is a scenario whereby these people will take up arms. They might take up even crude weapons to try and defend themselves because their actions are sanctioned by their leaders. Such incitement should not be allowed. That's
like telling people not to vacate, and yet the government has already issued a warrant.
Yeah, the government, we saw Cyrus Oguna, the spokesperson of government, say that the eviction will continue.
Will continue.
Now, if you have, in fact, this region overwhelmingly voted for Jubilee. If you have leaders come up to contradict the policy of the government, it means that
they're in the ruling
regime. It means that, first of all, there is fire on the mountain. Secondly, they are not reading from the same script. Then they are actually contradicting the policy of the same regime they are serving. So it is only fair if these people actually conduct the relevant institutions and experts too.
Would it be right for someone to insinuate or also to or even to purport that or assume that the people who are against the eviction of the Mau are the factions that are falling out from the Jubilee party? Is it right? Would someone be, forgiven for insinuating or even thinking of that? Because we can see their faces in the media.
Everything is possible in politics. Everything is very possible. Because, when you see a leader stand up and say, the government is not doing that, the government is attacking us and we voted for them, the government is doing this because we are supporting this person, the government is doing this because we don't support them on the handshake, the government is doing this because of the fight on corruption.
And they are who is the government?
Yeah, it means they are the government. It means they are not reading from the same script. That's why I told you there is fire on the mountain.
Let's just pause it there and listen to another and listening to this other bite that we have.
Those orders that are purported to be in public domain is not the position of President Uhuru Kenyatta or the cabinet. It's a personal position of Keriako Tobiko and RC Natembeya, and we hope in the fullness of time they will go through.
This is, I think, need no interpretation.
Sure.
What do you think of this? And this comment has actually escalated the debate outside, the order that was issued by the CS.
The leader of majority is contradicting the position of the cabinet secretary, and I'm very sure the cabinet secretary is acting on behalf of the president. The leader of majority is also contradicting the position of the Rift Valley regional coordinator, Natembeya.
Natembeya, yes.
So you find that if Natembeya and Keriako Tobiko and even Cyrus Oguna are talking on behalf of the government. Then who is he talking on behalf of?
He's saying it's not the position of the government. It's the
That's why I'm asking.
It's a personal opinion.
That's why I'm asking if Tobiko, Oguna, and Natembeya are acting on behalf of the government. And when I talk about government, you know what I'm talking about. Who is he talking about?
Or who is he
or which government is he referring to? Because it is in public domain that of late has been a very critical member of Jubilee towards the handshake.
And especially the cabinet ministers. We remember the other time he was on the case of the alleged plot to assassinate the president. So he criticized some cabinet ministers as well.
He started criticizing some ministers, and now he has left the other ministers who allegedly plotted to kill the deputy president. Today is now on Tobiko. It means that the cabinet apart from being divided is not speaking from the same script. So I think the Senate Majority Leader should actually cool his horse and try to find out the policy of Jubilee, unless if he's communicating on behalf of someone else, unless if and the deputy president is in Jubilee, right? He's the deputy to the president.
Yes.
If he's speaking on behalf of the deputy president, let him come out clearly and say, okay, these people are not together, so we are on our own. That's why we are saying this. That's why we are actually contradicting the position of the policy of the government of the day.
Someone, I had this very funny argument, but then someone asked the other day, and he was like, you know, right now, the people that we expect to be criticizing the government, who are the opposition, are not speaking, and now we have the government criticizing itself. Are they shooting themselves on the foot?
Politics is dynamic. You know, I was also
Kenyan politics.
I was also joking with someone else who said, okay, for us ODM and the people who are in opposition, you can see we were the ones who were being tear gassed, we were the ones who were being beaten and arrested. Today you can see the people who are, he was talking about Nditi Nyoro.
Yeah, Nditi Nyoro.
So he was saying, you know, you can see now they are the ones who are suffering today, and they are shooting themselves by doing the foot, as you have said, because they are making a very hasty decision, and it might cost them going forward. If they hold their horses and try to mark time, the politics of the day, wait for the referendum and play a very smart card, maybe they might have something out of it. But so long as they want to fight the handshake, so long as they want to stand aloof and try to criticize the people who today control majority of Kenyans, 80% of the country, then I think they are playing a very dangerous card, which will affect them politically. Going towards 2020.
The president has also been seen very strongly defending his position and the handshake.
Sure.
And he's not moving from there. Although he's not answering directly to them, but his answer is always constant, that this we have done for the sake of the country and for our future. And if you heard his speech in Mombasa when he was speaking to the leaders, he spoke about, divisive politics. And also he was of the idea that, these we are doing for Kenya and not for individual gain.
Looking at the start of the second regime, we saw how there were chaos in this town, in this city. We saw how people actually were ready to be killed, how people were like provoking the policemen to attack them with tear gas, to even beat them.
The swearing in ceremony of
the swearing. Actually, the country was in total chaos and anarchy. The only card the president could have played was to extend his hand to the former prime minister. And you can see the kind of calmness that is in the country. And what the president is trying to do, he has actually communicated that he is a man of principles. He stands for his words. If he says that he's going this way, he cannot be shaken by anybody, including his friends, including his allies, so long as he stands for what he believes in. That's the kind of message he's trying to communicate. And given that this is his final term, he's trying to look for what everybody's saying, a legacy.
A legacy,
yeah. He wants to leave a legacy behind, and he will be remembered for that during his second regime, maybe there was peace, there were no demonstrations every now and then from Monday to Monday on the streets. Maybe 80% of the people were actually speaking from the same script. That's what he's trying to communicate to the country.
Would one be justified to say that the Mao issue could also be as a result of, corruption fighting back? Because right now, when you look for years, everybody has been quiet about the Mao. The Mao card has been used for political gain, and we know of the chunks of land that people own in there, and we also know of reports that have been made and by parliamentary committees. We know of the Ndungu report that also touched somehow on the Mao issue. Is corruption fighting back? Are these just, symptoms of what?
These are just political theatrics to measure the position of people in government and against government.
As a government, yeah.
Because people have come out strongly. Some of them, and I don't wish to mention names, who have come out to say that, okay, in the first scenario, the handshake was to curtail the efforts of the deputy president to ascend to power. Then came the fight on corruption. Then came the other issue, the plot against his life. Then today, the Mao Forest. People are saying that maybe it is an effort towards curtailing the deputy president from achieving the presidency. That one is debatable. That because we are in politics. That is politics. You cannot say that it is a fight back. The issue of Mao should be addressed, and it should be addressed like yesterday. It should be addressed immediately, because it is jeopardizing the lives of so many people. For posterity, that issue must be settled, and it cannot be solved using a political card, because it affects the social, political, and even economic lives of people in Kenya and even across the region. So you cannot say that it is a fight on corruption. You can't claim that it is a fight. It affects the economy and the lives of people. So that one should be resolved as early as today, because if we don't resolve the root cause of that thing, it will haunt us, and it will haunt us in the next several years to come. So I think this is the right time to handle that issue.
And it's very true. And as this UN report that came out, and where we saw, actually, we had the bite earlier, where Ibrahim Thiaw, who is the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification, say that this, degradation of forest is generating a huge loss to the world economy, estimating it at between 10 to 17% of the world GDP. So if you take 10 to 17% of Kenya's GDP being lost in degradation, quite a disturbing issue. Maybe, Rokin, as we finish, your final comments, because our time is up as well.
My final comments, just to my condolences to the family of Robert Gabriel Mugabe, and I want to wish the Kenyans in South Africa well. You know the xenophobia in South Africa. I want to wish them well, and to just condemn what the South Africans are doing, because as an African country, to kill your fellow Africans is very wrong and unjustified. Although the root cause of that is maybe economic well-being of the people. And generally in Kenya, in Kibra, I wish the candidates well, and to just wish Kenyans well too.
Sawa, and your friend Ndindi?
Ndindi Nyoro. No, the law will take its course. If he is culpable, then it is the right thing for the people, the relevant agencies, to deal with him. But if he's not guilty, then I wish him well too.
Thank you very much. Rokin Okot, a master's candidate at the United States International University, and also the MDF National Deputy Secretary General. Thank you, viewer, for joining us. This is GBS Morning Extra, and we are grateful that you taking your time and have been with us all along. To keep the conversation going, our hashtag on Twitter is @KenyaGBS. You can also use the hashtag GBS Morning Extra. My name is Timothy Omondi. I now pave way for my colleague, Kevin Nyariki, who is coming up with the sports. And yesterday, Harambee Stars, at least, they did not lose. They tied. So quite some hope there. Well, viewer, that brings us to the end of our show this morning. Bye-bye for now, and see you again tomorrow.